So what in the mint flavored marshmallow do we have going on here? Good morning, shepherds. Greg here, Whistling Wind Ranch. It's been a while since we posted up anything. You can tell my hair's getting a little long and I need to take the shears to it. So what do we got going on there? And just in the past while, I'm not going to update too much about what's been going on because basically I can't remember. It's been crazy. We've been having to bring feed in here because we're in a bit of a drought and we got a bunch of fires around us and everybody's scrambling for food. And our main fields that we got out back here isn't fenced for the sheep. So in order to catch up on some work, we're bringing in some feed here. So we'll just quickly go over feed today, the difference between haylage, silage, and how we feed them out. Because there's been a lot going on and also not a lot going on. Carrie today is off to the Chase Farmers Market. Yesterday we just brought some haylage back from somewhere. I'm having trouble remembering. But the past, oh gosh, I think it's been 14 days. We picked up another load of this 10 days or so back and we're feeding the sheep out. The thing that's going on around here right now is we're in a bit of a drought. Pretty much since last October, I'll say. Basically that's when it started. So we need to feed our sheep on the 60 that isn't fenced. So when we brought our first load in, I worked really quickly on securing our perimeter fence, the two sides on that. The downside is there's still, we got an easement to our place so that you can still go up one section and through just a barbed wire because, you know, barbed wire don't work for sheep. And then the other section out back to the other neighbors, there's no sheep gate or any fence put on the easement that crosses onto his driveway. And then there's nothing at the north end of our property. So they're basically walking down there, getting into another neighbor's and maybe getting onto the main road there. We'll probably get into the easement stuff in a later video. That's not today. It's just basically like, hey, this is sort of where we've been. So I do have videos on a couple of other stuff that need to get done, but let's just go over quickly. We were shepherding the sheep on the 60, which means us and the dog is blind and somewhat, well, she's deaf and somewhat blind. So she is no longer a very good shepherding dog. As a matter of fact, I don't even know where she was. She's right here and then she disappeared. Oh, there she is. She's up at the... Hey, Diff. Do you hear me? Zoe, Cookie, breakfast, dinner, gophers. No, she can't hear nothing. She's so she don't work so good for shepherding. So the deal was we'd take the sheep out in the morning and we just sort of make sure they wouldn't go where they're not supposed to go, up either one of those three areas that's kind of a weakness. And then we'd shepherd them. They'd go out and they'd eat. There's lots of forage out there for them, so they're happy sheepies. But it was about 2 to 4 hours in the morning, and then in the heat of the day they come in and they shut down, and then after the heat about 6 or so, well, 5 to 6, we'd take them out until about 9, and that's pretty much our morning and our night. The problem is for the middle of that day, that heat of the day, that's when we get to do anything, and we're just not getting anything done. You're exhausted because you've already worked 8 hours between the previous night and the morning, and now you got to try and get something done. Well, we're not getting anything done because it's just so much exhausting. You need a chance to have food and take a break. So we've picked up some feed here, and feed is getting hard to come by because, well, all of Western Canada right now and the Northwest states are really suffering. I think the Northwest states went through a tough spring. To the east of us, so Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta have had a rough spring, and now BC's in a rough summer. So nobody's got any feed anywhere. There's massive downsizes on flocks and herds going on right now. There's a shortage of feed because if you have to evacuate, you have to put your animals on feed. So it's kind of a rough way right now for farms, just in general. You're going to probably see a bit of you'll probably see an increase at the store shelves coming up, even though people are flogging off their flocks and their herds. A lot of the meat packing plants, the big ones, and a lot of the grocery stores tend to take that as a chance to jack prices up, because they know if we're flogging off herds and flocks that there's going to be an issue, so they'll just bring their prices up right now. The farms and the ranches are all going to get bottom dollar for their animals, so the middle people are going to be making that money. So you're going to start seeing that pretty much within the next 2 or 3 months here. You're going to start seeing that starting to happen. The farms and the ranches, you'll probably start seeing some issues with them. They're going to have trouble paying bills because they're getting bottom dollar for their animals. We'll start to see, sorry, I got a bit of a stuff up because we're in smoke right now. You'll start to see the farms and ranches maybe will start making more money. I think cattle right now is at an all-time high, actually. But you're going to start to see that price, I think, start to drop. Sheep are kind of dropping out right now. Cattle are kind of on the up for the farms and ranches, but you're going to start seeing in the next few months going into winter that the cattle prices are probably going to drop because the feed is just not there. So they can't winter their animals. They're going to have to take them into the auctions and butcher like massive, because the feed is not there. So if you can make it through with your animals that you got now, next year, maybe the year after that, you're going to start to see the value back to the farmers for smaller operations start to come back up again. So it's going to be a bit of a rough roller coaster here in the next few months. That's just sort of what we're starting to see around here. There's already been people have started to try and downsize flocks and herds. Pigs and birds are all starting to flood the markets right now. So unfortunately, if you're a consumer, you're not going to notice a difference. You might just start to see the prices start to climb, and those of us at this end of things are going to start to see the prices go down. There's just such a disconnect between the consumer and the producer that, yeah. But I've been rambling for way too long. We're into feed today. So we are feeding what is called a haylage. You saw it was wrapped like that. It can be green wrapped, it can be white wrapped, just whatever. I've seen other ones, different colors. What a haylage and silage is basically an ensiled forage. It's wet, it's baled wet with moisture in it. Most of your hays that you see that people feed their horses, the little square bales, the stuff we feed in the winter, it's not wrapped. It's baled dry. You have to be careful if you bale your hay with any moisture in it, because that moisture trapped inside that dry feed, it gets warm, it gets hot, and then you get any sort of air to that, they can combust and they can actually burn. So these are wrapped to prevent that air getting into there, because if you know, one of 3 things that it takes for a fire is fuel, air, and an ignition source. So what they try to do here is, this is all fuel, dry, what do you call this, plant matter is all fuel. It's all fuel. So we got fuel, and then they try to, you can't really get rid of an ignition source. The ignition source could just be the fact that it gets so hot inside it combusts. So by wrapping that bale, they're trying to prevent any air from getting into it, so you eliminate that air. It also prevents these from molding. When you get these bales wet, it's just a massive, anything that was on the grass, any of the bacteria, any of the fermentation process to break it all down, you got those bacteria still in there. So trying to prevent that air from, he's falling down, trying to prevent that air from getting in there to create any mold. Especially important for sheep. They're really prone to a listeriosis, which is a brain infection, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I'm not looking it up right now. But it comes from like getting a bacteria and ingesting a bacteria, and it can cause a brain infection, and then it pretty much kills the animal, and it's really, really unpleasant to deal with. So when we buy these haylage bales, and I'll go into the difference between haylage and silage in a minute, because there is a difference, we try to feed these out in about 3 to 4 days. What that does is make sure that these don't get a chance to create too much bacteria inside, or any. By feeding it out quickly, you're not letting that stuff get a chance to grow. You're also not giving that bale a chance to absorb too much or get too much moisture into it, and you reduce that risk of combustion, especially at the temperature we're at now. In the winter time, these can freeze. There's so much moisture in them, so you're a little bit safer there. But doing it in this like 40-degree heat around here, you got to feed them out quick. Which this here is a third cut haylage. If I gave them this bale, it would be gone in a day. We're going through these in about a day, 2 days or so, depending on which groups and if we shepherd them. So, you can see this through here. You can sort of see how dry this is. This is third cut haylage. That's really nice and fine. But you can see a bit of the moisture right here. This is actually wet to the touch. And then this is actually dry up here. It dries out fairly fast. This is only a 20%-ish, 25% baled, which means there's 25% moisture in this. These are ridiculously heavy. These little 5x5 bales weigh as much as a big, those big squares we get, or a big 6x6 round bale, just because there's so much moisture in it. This has got a lot of moisture in it. So the difference between haylage and silage, now we'll get into that. Silage has higher moisture content in it. So haylage has between 15 and 40% moisture in it, and your silage will have 40% or more moisture content in it. So if you have animals that are difficult, they won't drink, great way to get moisture to them, or fluids to them. So if you got in a bit of a drought and you're having trouble getting, say, your well starting to get a little bit, it might be a good idea to try and find some of these, because it will give them a little bit of extra moisture. The downside to these is because of the moisture content, if you're buying per pound and you're buying these for the same price as, say, your big dry forage bales, your hay bales, these have less, how do I word this? Because there's so much moisture in here, you're buying, if you transport, how am I putting this here? The downside to these is if you're paying for transport, or if you're paying per pound and you're paying the same price per pound as, say, a dry forage feed, you're actually paying for water. You're not paying for as much forage in this as you would be a dry bale, or you're not paying the transporter to bring you as much feed because they're transporting moisture, water in this, right? So that's kind of the downside to that. Some things you got to watch out for is, like we said, that bacteria growth. There is some white sort of yeasties on the side that you might get if there's a hole in the side of the bale. The wrap, the green wrap that's around here, or the white wrap you see right there. So if there's a hole in the green wrap or the white wrap or something, one of the things you might see will be a white sort of stuff on there. That's just a yeast. It's okay to sort of feed to these guys. I wouldn't recommend feeding it to any ewes that are with lamb or in lamb or younger lambs. You could throw it to, say, your rams or your older ewes or your market lambs. It's probably safer to do that, just in case there is a little bit of bacteria in there. You want to be a little bit safer. So the wetter the feed, the faster you want to get it fed out. I don't really like to feed silage to the sheep. It's just too wet. It's just way too wet. What we did when I was working on the neighbor's cattle ranch over there was he would take his silage bales, and they were super wet, and he would use the big bale buster and break them up with the dry feed, and then he'd mix that all together, and you'd get like 50% silage and 50% hay. And the cows just loved it. But cows are a little bit they're a little bit hardier than sheep when it comes to that wet feed. So we're really careful. We watch this all over. If there's anything sort of white, we just put it off to the side, because that's the yeast. We don't feed it to Manny's group here, because they're all sort of with lamb or in lamb. The main flock over there doesn't have any lambs at risk, so they're just going to get what they get. And we'll finish feeding this out this morning. And yeah, when we buy hay, it's 195% dry matter, right? That means there's very little moisture in it. When you're getting these transported, this haylage bale right here probably has 80% dry matter in it, because it's 20% moisture. And then your silage bales, because it's 40% moisture, you're feeding 60% dry matter. God, I am all over the place. So I'll just get into this quick here, why knowing your percentages of your feed is important. So this haylage bale, we'll just go for nice round numbers, 20% moisture content, which means there's 80% dry matter in this. Now, usually know the numbers for feeding hay because it's how we calculate our hay usage for the winter and how much to book out. But let's just use, say, the yardigans up here. There's only 10 of them in there. I know there's more, but let's just use nice round numbers right now because I love round numbers. So they need 5 pounds per head per day just because of their older, there are some extra needs. They need a little bit extra feed. Just for whatever reason, we count them as 5 pounds per head per day. So what that means is they just, they need 5 pounds of dry matter forage every day for all 10 of them, which means 50 pounds of dry matter they need per day. That's what they get fed. So we need 20% more dry matter because if we fed them 50 pounds of this, 20% of that is moisture. They're not getting their complete dry matter per day. So we have to add an extra 10 pounds of this to their feed. So technically, if we were weighing our feed, this here, we'd have to feed them 60 pounds. If we were weighing it, that's what they get per day. And we could just break that up. They get 30 pounds in the morning, 30 pounds at night, happy sheep, yay. If we were feeding a dry hay, they just get the whole 50 pounds. That's all they get. They don't need any extra. So it's just sort of itchy. So it's just the calculations based on that. I mean, these are wicked heavy. With the water in there, they're wicked heavy. So these little bales, like I said, weigh as much as a big 8x4x3 square bale, so, or 6x6 round. So just really like this stuff. It's almost like feeding them fresh grass. So another thing to be careful of is I like to sort of feed this out before they're in their pen and then let them onto it to just let it cool off a bit because it can be pretty warm. So, but just, that's just some things to watch out for. They will overeat this stuff. It's like candy to them. So you just got to kind of do make sure we feed this when we do, especially when we're feeding a baleage or a haylage like this, is we do make sure we feed out twice a day because they will goldfish on this stuff, pretty much eat until they explode. So anyways, I gotta get to feeding this because the main flock needs theirs because they're not going out today. They're staying in to eat, so I can get to work on my truck frame. Can you guys see up there? No, you can't. Oh yeah, you can see the blue tent right there. I'm working up in there. I'm trying to get my truck frame all cleaned up. So, trying to get that cleaned up. So, pitter patter, let's get at her. I just have to load up the next load here to go in, but I just remembered something. Make sure you know who's cutting your hay or your baleage, silage. You don't want any dirt or molehills or anything. So molehills, if the gophers or moles are digging up in the hay field and they make those little mounds, any dirt that gets baled into this is going to mold out almost right away. Not mold out, it's going to introduce a lot of bacteria and gunk right away, and that will cause massive health issues for your sheep. If they're full of molehills and dirt, you're pretty much screwed. Don't feed the bale out. This is really nice and clean, like very nice and clean. We've bought stuff before that, there was a ton of dirt in it, and we did have some issues, and that's why. Make sure there's no dirt in it. There's really nothing you can do. If there's dirt in any part of the bale, I'd pretty much count the whole bale as contaminated. But these are super clean. So know who's cutting your hay. Let them know what you're feeding and what you want to sort of look out for. And especially if you're a sheep farmer or livestock farmer of any kind, make sure you mention that when you go to buy your hay. Talk to the person that you're buying the hay from. Everybody's trying to look out for each other. So if they know that you're trying to feed sheep, they'll be like, oh, maybe it's got a bit too many dirt or too much molehills, or it might be not the right, it might be too wet or something. They might let you know. They'll probably try and say, like, you know, you have to feed it out so fast. They'll talk to you about it. Always talk to these guys and gals that are producing your hay. They'll help you out through it if you have a question. So yeah, but anyways, I'm just gonna get finished here, and that's a fairly short video, I think. Catch you guys later then. Hi Noel, hey Scorpion, hey Show Lamb, Shade, you're very talented. Hey Floppy, oh, that's Elizabeth. Hi Shade. Hi Shade. Hi Mr. Scorpion. Hey bud. Ooh, Shade. How you doing, Moxie? How's Moxie? How's Moxie? Shade. Shade. Ah. Ah. Ow. Good boy. Yes, I'm sorry I'm not giving you as much. Uh-oh. I know Al. I know Al. Very needy little Shade. I know Al. Oh, you just had a drink, didn't you? There's good babies. Good lambs.